Today's talk is on conditioning, basic athletic conditioning. And it's a simple enough term, right? It means you train to meet the conditions you intend to race under, or you meet the requirement of the demand. There's a demand and there's a requirement, and conditioning is what gives you the path to that demand. So you toughen yourself up physically and psychologically in direct relation to the challenge. So you have the challenge. How are you going to meet that challenge? You can't meet that challenge with ideas and concepts. You've got to meet that challenge with some kind of tangible reality. And the thing about conditioning is it's not complex. It's a basic athletic need. And if you ignore the need, then you intend to ignore the reality and challenge. And when it doesn't work out, you shouldn't be surprised when the image doesn't fit the requirement, or when the outcome doesn't reflect the work that you did. And if it doesn't reflect the work that you did, it often means that you didn't condition yourself in the right fashion. It wasn't some kind of complex picture that you need to pull apart to look at. It's just a basic requirement of conditioning. So here are the main conditioning mistakes for me. So too fast, too soon in training. Setting unrealistic paces and that won't hold you in good stead for this sustained ability to pace in a race situation, which is basically what conditioning does. It gives you the ability to sustain your pace, to sustain your effort. And it's not much point if you can hold it for half of the race, but you can't hold it for the rest. And there's no medals for halfways. There's no prologue here. There's no winner in the first 10, 15 minutes. It's a case of, what can you sustain? And when you look at what you sustain, it has to be realistic. And the training had to be realistic enough to meet the demand of the speeds of the race, the sustainable speeds. So the second problem is overreaching, which is basically too much too often. And your heart is essentially just a muscle. Overdo it and it'll push back with heart rate suppression, hampered heart rate variability. Your brain will be cloudy and foggy, and your pacing will be flatlined. You can't reach the upper threshold zones because the heart rate is suppressed. So we need to be careful of that kind of suppressed heart rate, because it really stops you from developing in training. And in one sense, if you're doing a whole lot of work and you've lost your heart rate variability and you've lost your heart rate is suppressed, then you're virtually wasting your time. So overreaching is one that you've got to be really careful of. Don't do too much, just do enough. So the next part of these issues is the incorrect pacing. Specifically, it needs to be specific, realistic, tangible, and in line with the target. You need to be able to hold the pace so it's fast enough, but it doesn't cost you too much in terms of oxygen and energy expenditure. And that's a no-brainer. It should be straightforward, but this is probably the biggest single loser in the conditioning window. Condition yourself for conditions. Train at paces that allow you to work your oxygen costs down over time. So you're moving fast for low oxygen costs. That's conditioning. That's basic conditioning. That should be the first port of call. That should be the first cab off the rank. But it's often not, especially in groups where group dynamics come into it. So the next part of it is sport-specific strength. What good is your speed if your caboose falls apart because you're not strong? You can easily condition yourself for strength across all three modalities. For instance, SE in the swim, you can use paddles and pull, correct tech. Open water is another one. Rough water is more of a strength swimming. Wetsuits, it's a different kind of swimming. It's more of an SE effort. And it's it's important to do that work, to do that open water work, to do that wetsuit swimming, to do that paddle work, to bring that strength on, to learn how to hold. And the bike, it's obviously big gear reps of varying intensities, hilly rides, power and intensity come into that. But strength is the biggest one, and the run's the same, hilly trails. You know, anything that conditions your strength like that is critically important. And often I would hazard a guess that a hilly run over trails would be more value than going to the track and banging out 200s and 400s at speeds that are too far above race pace. If you can make yourself resilient, if you can make yourself strong, if you're challenging your body and to work out how to balance itself on uneven terrain, and because of the less impact that you get on trail, it's a massive strength builder. It gives you the ability to be a lot stronger in training. And not only that, but running on trail also gives you the ability to do more kilometres a week. And I've experienced that as a coach myself. I would say for some people up to 20 to 30 to 40 Ks more kilometres per week because of the running on trail. It doesn't mean that we don't run on road, but it means that we don't exclusively run on road, and we use the trails to strengthen ourselves. So the next part of it is nutrition. And yes, nutrition is conditioning. You know, if you put crap fuel in, you'll get crap economy out. So we need to condition our body with clean fuel, good protein sources, essential fat sources. Make sure that you pay attention to what you put in and to the withdrawals that you're making and what those withdrawals require. You know, is it carbohydrates? Is it protein? Is it fats? Is it oils? I mean, and more essentially, what resonates with your body? We're all individuals. So we need to think of these components as also conditioning, and recovery is another one. You know, you can, if you want to condition yourself for excellence and you're shortchanging your sleep and your recovery, it's a great way to put yourself in the box. You know, pushing an intense session on 4 hours sleep is not conditioning. Now, you might push yourself through that session because it's on the program and you believe that you need to do it. But in actual fact, what you're doing is you're deconditioning yourself. Once again, if the heart rate's suppressed and you can't reach threshold zones, it's deconditioning, it's not conditioning. So you're better off not doing it. And that's confronting, right? You're better off not doing it than doing it. You need to think about your training in terms of what conditions me and what deconditions me. And if you're doing something with bad form, you're deconditioning yourself. That's all there is to it. And I mean, mental health is another one. Don't train intensely if you're stressed to the hill. Dial it up or back based on your stress levels. I mean, this means you have to pay attention to what's happening in your life and not add a bag of cement to it, not put a piano on your back, not be constantly adding to an already full bucket, because that is also conditioning. Because what you need to understand is psychologically, when you train, you condition your mental and physical, let's call them bodies or modalities, for the specific needs of that requirement, for that challenge. And I mean, we could sit here all day and go on about the aspects of conditioning, but what you need to understand about conditioning is conditioning are the lower levels of training. They're the underpinning levels. They're the basic levels. It's the strength. It's the oxygen carrying capacity. It's the mental capacity to cope. It's the heart rate variability. It's the lack of heart rate suppression. It's the lack of brain fog. It's what's taking you forward. And you need to become aware of what takes you forward and what takes you into reverse. What is conditioning? What is deconditioning? And when we talk about deconditioning, we often talk about not training. Well, when we don't train for a week, we go into a state of deconditioning. But when we train ineffectively above what we're capable of, we are deconditioning ourselves. We're out there running too long we get to a point in that run, let's just say it's a 2-hour run or something, and we're running 3.5 hours, we're deconditioning ourselves on the back of that run because we're doing it with bad form. So if you're doing something with bad form, you need to look at it as deconditioning. You need to do it for long enough that you are conditioning yourself for the demands of the specific needs of that race. It's that simple. Thanks for listening.